My Chester Leech worked really well in the waters of Lago Strobel, better known to most of us as Jurassic Lake. It also worked really well in North American waters too. Hi everyone, I'm Phil Rowley, and today I'm going to tie you the Chester Leech, a pattern that gets its name from the nickname my wife gave to a squirrel that frequents our backyard. No, don't worry, I didn't tie the fly out of Chester, but I certainly use Zonker cut pine squirrel strips for the tail from some of his relatives. But Chester's fine. Join me at the bench, I'll show you how I tie this great little leech pattern.
So let's tie the Chester Leech. Into the jaws of the vise, I've placed a Daiichi 4647 number 10. This is their 60-degree heavy wire jig hook. You could also use, in black nickel, you could also use a 4640 as well. For the tying thread, you could use red or, in this case, black. So I'm just going to attach the tying thread directly behind the bead. And the bead, I'll show you in a second, is a tungsten head turner bead in gold in 1/8 inch. So this is a teardrop bead. You'll notice here, this one sitting here right now is showing it quite well. There's a concave side to this bead, and that's the side that I have facing the front right here that pushes forward tight against the hook eye and takes the mass of this bead out in front of the eye, which allows me to, if I want to fish this under an indicator using a clinch knot to attach the fly to my leader, it will hang balanced. This is also an excellent cast and stripped fly. I took it on one of my trips to Argentina, to Jurassic Lake, and any fly with red in it there is always well received by the fish. And we see the finished fly here. It has kind of a reddish dubbed body on it and works quite well. The first part is a micro pine Zonker strip in black. Nice thin, low profile. When this material gets wet, the hide softens and really moves and shakes in the water, and also is quite durable. So I'm just going to tie this in with tie it in upside down, because you got to remember when this fly is fished, it's going to roll over on its back because of the way the tungsten bead is positioned on this jig hook. It rides hook point up. So we're just going to hold that in place, secure it down the shank. Good firm purchase, like so. That's going to sit like that. And then to trim the hide, you can certainly use your scissors, but I like to use a straight edge, and I want to trim it so it's about, the hide's about the shank length or slightly shorter. So I'm just going to come in here with, I'm trying not to block it on camera, but just come in here with a bit of an angle. I'm sorry my fingers are in the way a little bit, but that's just the way they work, and just give that a cut. And by cutting it with the straight edge like that, I'm only trimming the hide, and I'm not trimming the fur. I don't want to trim that off. I just want to trim through the hide itself to remove it, and we're good to go. We're going to add a little bit of flash to this in the form of holographic red Flashabou, number 6996. I'll just reach in with my scissors points. I put a notch in the pack, and see I've done this a few times. I reach in and I'm going to pull out a few fibers, 3 or 4 fibers, 3 or 4 strands rather. Reach in with my scissors points. That keeps everything nice and gathered in control. And then I just trim those 3 from the package. And I'm going to lay these on the barrel of the bobbin. So I've got at least a shank length or so of material out in front and the rest out the back. And we're going to double those around, slide those off, and move them up and secure them on top of the leather, like so, right down to the base of the tail, and trim them like that. So they're going to flicker and flash in the tail as well. So now we're going to form a dubbing loop. So let's pull the camera wide so you can see what I'm doing. Let's form a dubbing loop. So we're going to take our tying thread forward about the midpoint. I'm going to pull down on the bobbin, take my forefinger, wrap my thread around the forefinger, come back up to form a loop. Then I'm going to rotate this loop to the top of the shank and walk that tying thread down to the base of the tail. And what this does is closes up that thread loop right here at the base of the tail, so it won't, none of the dubbing won't be inclined to slide out because it'll be pinched in there. Because I don't like to use dubbing wax. If you watch my videos before, you know I like to use a lot of dubbing, but I don't use the dubbing wax. So I'm going to replace my forefinger with my dubbing tool. This is kind of Dr. Slick makes this one with a weighted end. So I'm just going to place this into the loop and let it hang and replace my finger. I'm just going to let that hang, trying not to have my thread on the bobbin tangle up with my loop. For the dubbing, this is a bit of a custom blend, but it's easy for you to do. This is black red Arizona Simi Seal mixed with an equal amount of red Arizona Simi Seal. So a 50-50 mix, 1 bag to 1 bag, 1/2 bag to 1/2 bag, an equal ratio blended together in a coffee grinder gives this nice livery red color. So we're just going to take, and I'm just going to take the dubbing and just pull it out a little bit and just sort of remix it, restack it if you will, even up the fibers and just free up some of these fibers. And then I'm just going to insert little pinches of this. So I start, sorry I'm off camera, but pull down. I start with a clump like so, open the loop near the dubbing tool, insert it into the dubbing loop and slide it up, leaving a little bit of bare thread right at just before it touches the shank. And I'm going to repeat this process, pinching out a sparse equal amount. You could read through this quite easily. You can see right through this. Don't use too much because they'll just all compete and your dubbing's not going to flow and breathe properly. So we're just going to keep stripping this out and move this up into position. Strip some out and just completely fill the loop. You're going for the, you can see here I've got the same amount of dubbing in the loop itself. There's no big bare spots or uneven clumps. I want it all the same volume all the way through. And you don't want to make too long a loop. If you're in a situation, we're fine here. This is about a 4-inch dubbing loop I've got going here. This is more than enough for this fly, but if you had to build a fly with a longer, bigger, needs more dubbing, you would do that in 2 applications, not one long one, because it's difficult to wrap a long loop accurately, and it's also you tend to bang your hands on your tying bench. So I'm just going to start spinning slowly. That'll get this locked in place. And then I'm going to come in with my forefinger at this midpoint, give the dubbing tool below me, the dubbing whirl, a spin, and that's going to travel up, and I'm going to keep spinning until those fibers radiate out about 90 degrees, or you can see how this dubbing loop all of a sudden has a little spring back, a little elasticity to it. That's when you know things are tight enough. Now, the Simi Seal is a blend of nylon mohair and the Angelina fibers that are the highlights, and sometimes that long strand dubbing can get trapped and wrapped around the loop, so I'm just going to gently come in with a dubbing brush and pick out any of the where it's clumped up and free as many of those long fibers as I can. So brush that down. Be careful, obviously you don't want to break your tying threads, so don't be too aggressive, but just, and basically you've turned that dubbing into a bit of a hackle. So now we're just going to start winding. Again, using that bare thread to aim the dubbing loop, if you will, to get it started exactly where you want. And I've said this on a number of times on my videos, trying to avoid situations where my first wrap has to be my best. And I am just stroking these fibers just like I would wind a wet fly hackle by pulling my fingers back through and sweeping those fibers back, and just one turn right in front of the other. Again, trying not to trap any fibers down. We brushed them all out to free them up. It wouldn't make much sense to then wind the body forward and not take any care in doing so and trapping them all back down again. So we're just going to keep coming up. This is looking good. Again, pulling back and just wind that dubbing noodle tight up against the rear of that bead. just like that. Right tight. Just pack it in there. It really locks that bead in there. I'm going to come up, a couple turns over the top, a couple turns in front, trim away that excess. And then we're going to take a little super glue. I'm going to pull down on the thread a little bit, and I'm going to spin it clockwise. And that will twist up or cord up the the thread. And then coat that twisted thread with our super glue, pull back any of the dubbing fibers, and just wind that coated thread right in behind the bead. And I'm going to come in with our whip finisher. 3 to 5 turns. Trim away. So now that we've finished the tying portion, now we just have to style the fly a little bit. So I'm going to take a dubbing brush and I'm going to aggressively brush against the grain of the dubbing, if you will, by pulling it forward. That'll free up any of these fibers. You can see how these beautiful long strands, so it looks like it kind of fell in the bathtub with a hairdryer. And then we're just going to now brush everything. Now that we've freed up those long fibers, we are just going to brush back, and you can see how that dubbing flows back and blends in with that squirrel tail and gives it a really some great action, some good contrast. Now you could certainly style this even further. If you watch the fly tying video for my ruby-eyed leech, which is on my channel, the description will be in the comments below. You can also take this, and if you've got the time, dip the body portion of this fly in a bath of hot water. Like take a glass of water and put it in the microwave for about a minute so it's almost boiling, very hot to the touch. Attach a pair of hackle pliers or hemostats to the hook and dip it in there quickly, and then pull it out and then stroke those fibers and set it aside to dry. It takes a lot of the memory out of these fibers, and you'll get a nice leech-like slender profile and style your fly that way. But this fly actually is probably pretty good to go as is. And like I say, you can fish this under an indicator or cast and stripped. And if you ever come to Argentina with me, this is one of the flies you'd want to have in your fly box, the Chester Leech.